Thank you, Delphine. G'day, everyone. Thank you. Bit of respect. It's now my great pleasure to introduce this morning's first plenary session. Richard Connor attributes much of his success to the serendipitous discovery of Shark Bay, Garadagudu, Mulganasee country, where he experienced some of the most thrilling moments of his life while observing unexpected dolphin behaviour. Now affiliated with the Florida International University, the title of Richard's plenary is The Shark Bay Dolphin Alliances and the Future of Cetacean Behavioural Ecology. Richard?
Thank you, Simon. And I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak to you today about the Shark Bay Dolphin Alliances and a bit about the future of behavioral ecology in our field in the face of climate change. Perth, Wajak country, and especially Shark Bay, Mulgana country are really second homes to me, so I feel enormous gratitude for the time I've spent here. You go straight north 850 kilometers, you find Shark Bay, I think one of the most spectacular places on the planet. Agreed, I'm a bit biased. The Mulgana name is Gatarguda, as Simon says, which means two waters, because as you see, Shark Bay is bisected by the Peron Peninsula, and we have study sites in both waters. The original study site on the east side of Peron Peninsula right there, out of the Monkey Mia campground, and in the Western Gulf, that's since 1982, and in the Western Gulf, since 2007 out of Useless Loop. So I just want to show you what an incredible habitat Shark Bay is. It's World Heritage listed, and it's absolutely stunning place, not just in the water, but on land, spectacular wildlife. Again, you see how privileged we are to live and work in this incredible place. In the beginning, 1982, Rachel Smolker and I hitchhiked up from Perth to what was then a very rustic camp where several dolphins were coming into the shallows to take fish from people, and they still are. And we were thinking, you know, like Jane Goodall habituated chimpanzees to bananas so she could watch wild chimpanzee behavior at close range, we would be able to learn something about wild dolphins in the shallows there. And we certainly did. And I'll talk about that somewhat. But we didn't have a boat that year, but we were able to borrow a little 12-foot dinghy on two glassy, calm days and got offshore with our hand-rolled black and white film and photographed many of the characters we continue to follow for the decades to come, including my favorite of all time, Real Notch, here in 1982 on black and white film, and here 2 years before he passed away in 2012. Real Notch, we documented a 30-year career consorting females. I think that's the record. He was a master dolphin politician and a minor god. So here's Rachel and myself out on the boat in the mid-'80s. Before I launch into the Alliance research, I'll just set the stage with a few words about their life history and ecology. They're beautiful little dolphins, only 2 meters long. Here's a pup nursing from its mum. They stay with her about 4 years. But in extreme cases, older mothers will keep their offspring and even nurse them for 7 to 8 years, and it's kind of ridiculous looking. They're about as big as their mothers alongside her in infant position. This is an unfortunate picture. This is the famous female holyfin who came into the beach to take fish for decades. She was very popular. And in 1995, she died after a stingray spine penetrated the left ventricle of her heart. It had been migrating for some time. And this is how we found her on the beach. You see these belly speckles that they get just before puberty that spread in coverage over as they age. So she died at 35. Lucky dolphins can get into their 40s and maybe even a bit older. These guys pursue a wide variety of prey, fish, occasionally squid and crustaceans, throughout the water column, poking around the seagrass and sand at the bottom, catching fish in air, and even up onto the beaches, you'll see. But particular dolphins often specialize more or less in particular foraging habitats and behaviors, and that becomes important. So they also have to worry about bigger fish, tiger sharks especially. Over 70% of our dolphins have shark bite scars. These enormous seagrass beds in Shark Bay support a lot of everything: dolphins, dugongs, sea turtles, and a lot of sharks. So they have to worry about that. Social behavior, we see a lot of it. And just like primates groom each other, the dolphins maintain and form and repair their bonds after a disagreement by petting each other with their flippers. It's very important. Here's a bit of video footage Simon Allen got from his drone of 3 members of the Hooligan Alliance petting each other. We see a lot of this. Right. More intense social behavior often involves body-to-body contact. It can be friendly, playful behavior or aggressive, or the sociosexual category, which runs the gamut between friendly and aggressive. These guys have a classic fission-fusion grouping pattern, which means that individuals in different combinations come together and split up throughout the day, much like we do. This is a pretty big fuse. So it's in that fission-fusion context that we've been studying these multi-level dolphin alliances, male alliances. And I think of it as sort of a window into dolphin social intelligence in the wild. Why? Because it's really easy to see. It's really obvious. It's a kind of behavior that humans can readily see and quantify, including the vocalizations. So first I'm going to describe the 3 different levels of alliances and their functions, talk a little bit about how they form, their ecology, and then studies reveal something about the social cognition of alliance behavior. So I want to acknowledge the key collaborators on the Male Alliance Project in each decade, starting with Rachel Smolker, who started the project with me in 1982. And I can also mention Andrew Richards in this decade. In the 1990s, the big Super Alliance Project with Mike Heithaus and also Lynn Barre, who's in the audience here. And in the 2000s, the biggest project we ever did with Michael Crutzen, and I can also mention Bill Sherwin, Jana Watson-Capps, and Simon Allen, and even Rocky, who helped us out one year there. And for the last 10 years, the team has been Michael Crutzen at the University of Zurich, Stephanie King at Bristol, myself now at Florida International, and Simon is all over the place: Bristol, Zurich, UWA. There you go. And by the way, you can go to our website for photos and pictures and publications and so on. Right, here we are just this past August out doing playback experiments, having a wonderful time. So I'm going to talk about these alliances in the order that we discovered them, level 1, 2, and 3. So first order alliances are pairs and trios of males, and the function of these associations is to form aggressively maintained consortships with individual females that can last from minutes to weeks. In fact, up in Shark Bay right now, there's one that may break the record. I think it's like 60 days or something. So here you see a pair in formation behind the female and a trio behind their female. So we also had 3 males in the 1980s that were coming into the beach at Monkey Maya, and they started herding females in there like there was no tomorrow. And so we were able to observe a lot of this behavior at close range, and we learned a lot about it, including this particular vocalization called pops, which are low-frequency click trains, the peak energy 1 to 2 kilohertz, and they're slow, 6 to 12 clicks per second, that they use as an aggressive threat to keep the female close to them. And if she doesn't approach, escalate aggression. Now this is the male snubby waiting for the fish buckets to arrive, and that's the female Hana he's going to pop at. We should have volume on this, I hope. Volume. Volume. Do we have no volume? Turn it up, please.
She moves using closure.
Oh, we missed it. Anyway, pop, 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 pop. Like you do a pretty good job, too. So if they don't approach, sometimes you get escalated threats, and I hope the volume's up on this. So what you're going to see is the female's by, and her calf are by one male, the other male's a bit away. He's not happy about it, so he's going to threaten her with a head jerk and a crack sound. There you go.
Yeah, I'm popping now, 5150. And in there, with a head crack, 5150 by bottom hook, and he charges her Probably more simply.
So females will sometimes try to escape from the males by bolting rapidly away. That's her. Clam. They've got clam. It's clam.
Wow.
Who's up front with her?
Wow, bolt, 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 bolt.
Bolt. She bolted. Great. Great. Wow, look at her go.
She's going.
She's going. They're not really chasing, are they?
Yeah, they are.
So because the females will try to escape, the males have to guard her, and they have different ways they do this. And out in deeper water, they often have to spread out to forage individually at the bottom. And we have this incredible triangle formation. They dive away from the female, and they're returning from the foraging dive. They return converging on her. They keep her in the center of this incredible triangle. So in this consortship context, we also discovered a really interesting behavior, an affiliative-friendly behavior that's specific to females. One female swimming slightly behind the other in that staggered formation with her pectoral fin resting along on the side of the other. And in this context where they are being harassed by obnoxious males, we think it's an expression of support between the females. So second-order alliances. We have learned over the decades that this is the core social unit of male alliance formation. Once they're formed, these can be stable for decades, individuals gradually disappearing over time. Rarely will an individual join or leave, sometimes get kicked out, and those are fascinating cases, but these are really stable groups. Here you see a pair with a trio. And here you see a trio behind it, their female, with a pair behind their female. So I want to show how obvious these associations were in the 1980s. Rachel Smoker discovered the first and second level associations. This is video she took about 1986, I think. Look at that incredible synchrony, right? Two trios, side by side, going synchronously. Sometimes when they're excited around a female, two males will get side by side from different trios and surface synchronously. We think that reduces tension in a sort of competitive situation. Say more about that synchrony later. So we didn't know what these associations were about. And it's a real puzzle, because if males are simply competing for access to estrus females, they shouldn't be hanging around together in a friendly way, but they were. So we consider the biggest, most important day in the history of our project, August 19th, 1987, we discovered the function of second-order alliances. The three males that came into the beach at Monkey and Maya were herding the female holyfin. Another trio who never came in there came right into the shallows, approached them within a few meters, and did nothing. They left. So what's going on here? So I got in the boat, found them a kilometer offshore. They joined up with another pair who had a female. One of those males was a real notch. And together, the two alliances came back in. They charged right into the beach in front of the tourists, and the fighting just exploded right down the park through the mooring lines. And here's a video clip where they emerged at the end of the park victorious.
Holyfin, they went in there and stole her. Holyfin's in the middle of trips by Cetus and Real Notch High and Munch and all these guys. I don't believe this.
So Trips invite one guy reinforcements, huh?
This is like science fiction.
So the science fiction comment was because I had been steeped in primatology and reading the literature about primate societies. And I knew that multi-level alliances were so important in our own species, right up to the level of nation states. But there were no similar examples in all of primates and other mammals. So I thought, wow, it just blew our minds. So it was very exciting. So we were thinking that maybe there'd be a relationship between the size of the second-order alliances and the stability of their first-order alliances, because some males are in the same trios all the time, or pairs, and some males will switch partners between consortships. But it turns out we didn't find such a relationship. There's just a lot of variability there. But I want to point out that 3 different groups have achieved a size of 14, and each group maintained that size for 3 consecutive years. And how thrilled were we this summer to photograph the male gripe, who was part of the original 14-member super alliance we studied in the 1990s, starting in 1994. Here he is 30 years later, hanging out on the edge of a fight. He's the sole survivor of that group. And I'm sure he was putting his 2 cents into the disagreement there. So this shows you these cluster diagrams color-coded by second-order alliance, shows you just how variable bonds and relationships are within these groups. Some have quite tight bonds, but there's just enormous variation. In particular, males don't spend a lot of time with each other in these second-order alliances. I want to emphasize, sometimes they're all together, and it's really incredible to see that, but often they're spread out from each other at some distance. We also found that the stability of your first-order alliance predicts how often you're going to be seeing consorting females in these groups. This suggests maybe something like dominance relationships. At any rate, each of these second-order alliances is its own little complex society, contained complex society, nested within this huge fission-fusion society and overlapping with a bunch of other little second-order alliances. Livia Gerber, working out of Michael Crutzen's lab, found that males that had the strongest bonds and the most homogeneous bonds had enjoyed more paternities, the popular males, if you will. So look at the central panel there. Those colored shapes represent the home ranges of particular second-order alliances. And you see that each alliance overlaps with a number of others. And as you'll see shortly, not all of those interactions are hostile. And these male home ranges will overlap with individual female home ranges. This is data collected by Jana Watson-Capps out of Janet Mann's lab. And Jana found tremendous variation in the size of female ranges, an order of magnitude, which we think is related to these individual foraging specializations. But the point here is that individuals down here will never encounter individuals up here. It's a continuous open society. That's very unlike terrestrial mammals, where mammals that have complex social relationships typically live in bounded groups that are familiar to us by names like a chimpanzee community or a wolf pack or a baboon troop. So this kind of open society would really confuse this poor monkey. So just like in the 1980s, we were wondering about these associations between first-order alliances and what was going on. We started seeing friendly associations between second-order alliances, and same question. Well, it turns out that second and third-order alliances have exactly the same function: to attack and defend against attacks from other alliances in contests over individual females. Well, if the two levels of alliances have the same function, why is there another level? We think it's an insurance policy, because again, these guys are often spread out from each other. If you are the female and away from your second-order allies and you're attacked, it may help if you have other friends around. And we have some evidence in support of this. Males that have third-order allies can hold on to their females for longer periods of time. So my grad student, Whitney Friedman, was in the middle of studying the relationships, the third-order alliance relationship between these two, the blue PD group and the green KS group. And incredibly, in the middle of her study, the rascals, the red rascals there, who had been in the area forever, suddenly joined and formed a third-order alliance relationship with those guys. So look at that central pattern panel there, and you see the sort of three big blue and green dots indicating that the strongest associations maintaining these third-order alliance relationships are between a particular trio in each group. So you might think that kind of simplifies things, because it's really, these third-order alliance relationships are really just about the relationships between particular individuals in each group. Except when they get together, everybody is petting everybody. So everybody's playing a role in maintaining these third-order alliance relationships. And anyway, that pattern wasn't so evident in that third panel when the rascals joined. And notice how only 3 of the rascals joined. One of them died, and the other one, Lando, was kicked out. Evidently, he didn't fit into the new set of relationships. Poor Lando. So we see conflict at all 3 levels of alliances, between males in first-order alliances, second-order alliances, and third-order alliances. In 2006, I was watching this big fight between the PD and KS alliances, and I thought, oh, this is terrible. They've been friends for so long, and now it's over. The next day, they were back together again. So here we have the PD group is going to join the KS members, and that guy right there, who's kind of jerkily moving forward, is Big Midgie Bites. I don't know why it's so jerky. But Deet is in the other group, and Deet is petting with his mate because he knows what's coming. Big Midgie Bites has an issue with him. Bam! And they chase DEET away, and we didn't see DEET with them for a while. So alliances are formed when males are in their early to mid-teens, not with relatives, but with similar-aged peers, sometimes a male who's a bit older. But the process starts much earlier during the juvenile period. You go out there, especially in the mating season, you look at juvenile groups, and they have these incredible play groups, which are play consortship behavior. They're in pairs and trios, and somebody is in sort of a female role. It can be a male, can be a female. They switch partners. They even have the pop vocalizations. They do a lot of this. And at the end of the day, they go home and they're different ways. Whereas in adult consortships, they continue to consort the female through all behavioral activities. So Katie Holmes studied these juvenile groups, and two interesting findings to focus on here. The first, she found that older juveniles engage in more of this consortship play behavior than younger ones. And that's unlike play between individual primates, because they do it a lot when they're younger, but as they get older, their dominance relationships become more important, and it's more difficult to have symmetrical play interactions. But the dolphins are engaged in team play, which is going to be important when they're adults, so they do more of it. The other really big discovery here is that the proportion of time playing in the actor role, not being it, predicted paternity success. This was the first demonstration that play behavior predicted reproductive success in any mammal. So we were very excited about this. And we were able to do this by using data collected in the 1990s by Amy Samuels and Cindy Flaherty-Stamm. So this is really special. We combined that early data with the late data because we lost Amy in 2008. The ecology of alliance formation, we think, is related to these individual foraging specializations. And I'm just going to show you 4 of the most fabulous ones, starting with this sponge carrying. Stephanie took this incredible picture in August. So sponge carrying is a learned vertically transmitted behavior that only occurs in deep channels, mostly by females. It's been studied, it was discovered by Rachel Smolker, and it's been studied extensively by our group and also Janet Mann's group. And funny that every time anybody publishes a paper on sponging, the media, the press acts like they've never heard of it before. Tool use in dolphins. And tool use because they use these sponges to protect their snouts as they poke along the bottom trying to scare up fish. So at the top of the peninsula on a steep beach, we have this incredible hydroplaning behavior that's also mostly females and passed on to their calves. So I hope you can see the fish here that Simon got this drone. Do you see the fish right in there in the shallow water? The dolphin's tracking it. Fish probably thinks it's pretty safe in there, right? Boom, got it. And it's just to show you they do beach sometimes. Another wild behavior is they'll come up out of the water with these big shells on their noses. What are they doing here, shaking the shell? Well, photographs revealed there's a fish in there. They're shaking the fish out of the shell. And I just want to draw your attention to a Netflix documentary that's going to be later this month. Has some really wonderful footage of the shelling behavior underwater, and it's narrated by Barack Obama. Don't we miss him? And the last behavior here is kerplunking. This is shallow water seagrass beds. Listen to this. Listen. That pulse sound we think they use to scare fish.
Straining sound is incredible.
Yeah, and yeah, they sound like they're constipated. All right. So one possibility is that these young males form alliances with males with whom they share favored foraging areas and tactics. And that makes sense because then you can coordinate your alliance behavior more easily. So 2 lines of evidence for that. Orla O'Brien, my student, was looking at alliances with greatly overlapping ranges and where they preferred to forage. And so, for example, these 2 alliances, this is just east of Monkey Maya, in what we call the subdivided habitat. So the Hooks crew liked to forage, and they were kerplunkers over these shallow seagrass banks, the green ones, and the X-fins foraged in the deeper channels. And then out in the western Gulf, Manuela Bezozzero found a sponging alliance. So yeah, it's mostly a female behavior, but sometimes sons of spongers become spongers, and then I guess if there are enough of them, they can form a really formidable, I'm sure, sponging alliance. We also found systematic behavioral changes in alliance behavior going up from that subdivided habitat up the length of the peninsula. So in that subdivided habitat, you get a combination of pairs and trios, and north of that, it's almost all trios, and they also consort females at a higher rate, and they have more fresh tooth rake marks indicating higher levels of competition. Well, we had a lot of different hypotheses to explain this, but Pernille Sorensen just published her work, a meticulous study showing that the key factor here is the acoustic active space of that pop vocalization. Not whistles, pops. So you're a trio of males, you're out in open water, you want to threaten your female, pop, 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 pop. Well, you're also letting everybody else know that you have a female. Maybe not always a good idea. So if we're going to think about social cognition and alliance formation, what better place to start than that incredible synchrony, right? Synchronous diving, incredibly precise, even synchronous side-by-side leaps. And we also see amazing synchronous displays. We think these are creative. There is such a variety. We think they make them up. The alternative hypothesis is that, they get together and, hey, maybe let's do number 7B. That seems unlikely, so we think these are creative. Look at these two males doing synchronous belly slaps going in opposite direction on either side of the female. Triple leap.
Whoa!
Wow, sync leap. How cool is that?
It was very cool. This is a rooster strut, and you will see why it gets this name. And one of the wildest we have ever seen this summer. Simon got this on the video. What you're going to see here, there's two pairs of males behind the female and her calf. They're going to emerge from the bottom of the screen. You're going to just see them just completing what we're calling, obviously, this fish whack display. Then they're going to accelerate towards the female and repeat. Do you like that pose? They also coordinate and synchronize that pop vocalization. So at the top, you're seeing a single male and pop trains by a single male, but sometimes two males will pop at the same time. We think coordinating their guarding behavior. And Bronte Moore found that they will coordinate the interpop interval when they do this, even when that interpop interval is changing during the course of pop trains. So how are they doing this? We know from captive studies that dolphins are phenomenal at imitation in both the motor and vocal domains. In Lou Herman's lab here, they've told the dolphin to do what the human does, and you see they do a pretty good facsimile. So we would like an explanation that unites all of dolphin synchrony, the side-by-side simple synchrony and these complex looping displays. One possibility is imitation. But Lou Herman and our group both looked at frame-by-frame analysis of this synchronous behavior and found no evidence of leadership. Another possibility is entrainment. And entrainment is when, like, you start moving to the beat of music or you fall into step with somebody you're walking with. You entrain to their rhythm. But I think it's hard to use entrainment to explain these displays. Well, when Laura McHugh and I were digging through the literature for this more recent paper on synchrony, we found this incredible paper by Noe et al. They were studying human synchrony and comparing the context where one person is imitating the other or where they were both imitating each other simultaneously, mutual imitation. They called it the mirror game. And human synchrony was much more precise when they were mutual imitation, when they were playing the mirror game. I think the mirror game, mutual imitation, provides potentially a universal explanation for dolphin synchrony, which is the only other case of synchrony as an alliance signaling system in mammals, but outside of humans. So when Stephanie King joined us, she bought this boat-based hydrophone array that could triangulate onto localized sounds. Finally, we can tell who's talking. So here's just a quick bit of video of her collecting data in this context. or not. Let's see here. Well, anyway, it's okay. So the first thing that she did was demonstrate that each male had their own individual signature whistle. There'd been some question about that in Shark Bay or whether they had an alliance-specific whistle, but no, each male has their own signature whistle. Once she built up a catalog of these, then you can start doing playback experiments. Simon puts the drone right over the dolphin, play back the whistle through the speaker, and you can see the dolphin's instantaneous reaction. Amazing. And we found that males respond more strongly to their second-order allies than their third-order allies. Okay, that's not surprising, you think, except this response is irrespective of bond strength within second-order alliances or recent consortship history. Remember, bonds vary enormously in these groups, and we think what this tells us is that they treat all members of their alliance, regardless of their bond strength, as important team members, allies. And there's two other lines of evidence indicating that they value all males in their alliance, even those with whom they have weaker bonds. So Emma Cheriskin did this work here showing that dyadic bond strength predicts how often two males pet each other. That's not surprising. What is surprising is that whistle exchanges occur more often between males that have weaker bonds, perhaps in lieu of physical proximity. And then, looking at the synchrony, we found that males with weaker bonds actually have more precise synchrony. They're not together as much, maybe they work at it a little harder to maintain their bonds. So, convergence with humans in three important ways. This synchrony as an alliance signaling system, likely related to convergent abilities to imitate in the vocal and motor domains. Vocal exchanges of individual whistles, which is also important in humans. I don't know if it's anywhere else, in lieu of physical contact. And again, these intergroup alliances, the human model has always been based on human social structure. Humans have an intergroup cooperation, and it's always been thought to relate to their pair bonds and knowing who your in-laws and relatives are in other groups you're going to cooperate with. But the dolphins give us another route from a more promiscuous chimpanzee-like mating system to intergroup cooperation. So here, just admire this largest alliance system outside of humans. There's 120 males there in their color-coded second-order alliances next to third-order allies who have similar colors. Just an incredible system within which we can examine dolphin social intelligence in the wild. So now I want to say a few words about climate change. How am I doing? 3 minutes? Cool, perfect. So the question I asked in my abstract, if we lose a population of cetaceans, what will we know about what we have lost? And in most cases, just that there was a population there. And really no more than that. So if we look at this accelerating climate change, I'll just look at primates for a second, right? The golden age of primatology, learning all about their societies and cultures, was from the 60s, 80s, and so on. So if they're in trouble too, not just from climate change, lots of things like agriculture and so on. But if you lose a group of primates, you know what kind of society you've lost. You know what kinds of cultures you've lost. We are potentially now getting into a golden age of cetology with this incredible new technology. I mean, even in Shark Bay, the discoveries we're making now remind me of that early period of discovery in the 1980s. But more importantly, all these new toys are giving us this incredible access to all these other species and populations we've never been able to learn about before. But we're in a race against time. So I think there needs to be a really massive effort to learn about cetacean societies and cultures. But there's two big roadblocks here. Funding is obviously one of them because, let's face it, the funding for behavioral ecology just isn't what it used to be, right? And also, I would blame the fossilized structure of the academy, the department organizations. There's just not really a natural academic home for us in this area. So if you look at, if you go out in the forest and study monkeys and you publish a few papers, you can apply for anthropology jobs all over the world because they hire primatologists because they're interested in homology and divergence, right? How similar or different our ancestors are from us. But that's ignoring the equally important convergence. And we have the evidence now. Every time you study a new species of cetaceans, you find something really remarkable. Look at the bottlenose dolphins, multi-level alliances, menopause in killer whales, symbolic marking in sperm whales. All of these things are convergences with humans. The goods are there. The evidence is there. So, and then we have all these other features which are rare or unique compared to terrestrial mammals. So we really need to have a massive effort somewhere in the academy, ain't gonna be in the US now, but maybe a Max Planck in Germany or something dedicated to cetacean societies and cultures, or maybe just a friendly billionaire or two, I don't know. But need to do that. So buy my book. And I want to acknowledge all these funding organizations, and special shout outs to the Monkey Maya Dolphin Resort, who supported us for decades there, the traditional Malagana owners of the region up there, and to Richard Holst and Joe Haymans, who are back there, who gave us a home in Perth for 30 years. Thank you. Oh, you're not supposed to see that. Okay. How much under was I, Simon? All right.
Thank you, Richard. That was sublime. I just want to clarify when Richard says all these fancy new toys, he means really important research tools. We have a full 5 minutes for questions, so if people want to approach the mics up there near Thielen over here. And
I think I'm supposed to walk up so I can hear better.
Hello? Should be all right.
Yeah.
Should be all right.
So I was wondering, what do you think the females think about all this?
I think, and we published on this, I didn't have time to get into it today. We think the female strategy is to mate with as many males as possible to confuse the issue of paternity because of the underlying risk of infanticide. So they probably want to mate with each male, but they don't want to be monopolized by any male. And then within that, getting at female choice, that's difficult. We've tried it before. I think Janet's group tried. It's a very difficult question to get at, and it might be internal. And so that'd be doubly hard, but and maybe, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, thank you for that talk. It was awesome. I was just wondering if there's any way to look at sperm competition among the males in the different alliances.
Yeah, that's a great question. We'd love to. You know, to get at the question of, for example, skew, reproductive skew within these trios, you'd really need to have a large sample of each one. You'd need to have one alliance you're watching, hopefully a stable trio or something over decades. But in general, by sampling a lot of males, and if we keep at it, we may be able to relate paternity success to other, you know, like we do with the bonds, for example, and to other various characteristics. But sperm competition, yeah, it's probably there, but I don't know how we would quite get at it.
Good morning. So I have a question. How do you see these systems translated in other dolphin tursio populations or in other small cetacean species? Do you think they could follow the same systems or the same structure, or is a specific structure to the population in Sharks Bay?
We know there are differences, like they're very different from the larger bottlenose dolphins and the common bottlenose dolphin in Sarasota and so on. And that's why we need to get this big funding to go out and study all these other populations, right, and species, to find out how social structure relates to ecology, body size, et cetera, et cetera. So I would love to see a massive effort along those lines.
Thank you.
Thanks for the great talk. Just a question about the sex ratios in the population. Is it a male-biased adult sex ratio, and how would changing sex ratios affect the alliance?
I think it's about equal, but remember the females have this long interbirth interval, so at any given time, a proportion of the females are available to males, and so that's probably why they form these trios. Hal Whitehead and I made a model which, when you put in a few reasonable assumptions, you get pairs and mostly trios out of it when they're competing for a certain number of females. The competition's a certain level. The new model I was going to talk about but didn't, I think explains the multi-level alliances, and I can talk about that individually with you later at some point.
Hello. Thank you so much. That was a great talk. If you're looking for a postdoc, hello. But my question is, within these alliances, do they take turns with the female to try to make babies, or is there a hierarchy in who is then chosen for being the leader and able to actually mate with the female?
Yeah, we don't know. And one of the problems is that we see a lot of sexual behavior, but we see tons of just non-conceptive social sex in this population in general. And probably a lot of it occurs further underwater where we can't see, and maybe the drones will give us more insights to that in the future. We'd love to know that too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hey, fantastic stuff. Thank you, and well presented. I think I'd be misinterpreting you if I took this, at least if they go extinct, at least we knew. I don't think that's how you meant it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you know, we had this big heat wave in Shark Bay in 2011, it did a lot of damage. Now imagine if we'd never studied up there and there was lots of heat waves and basically the population got reduced to very little and all this complexity was gone. If we hadn't studied them, we'd never know it was there. So yeah, you know, what I'm saying is that at least for posterity, we need to find out what all these different societies and cultures are like out there, because, you know, if we're being realistic, we're not going to save them all. And even if there's remnants of them, they're not going to be what they were when they were at their full population size.
So cool. So I guess my question is, what would you have to say about leveraging the greater understanding of them towards actual, you know, action to protect them and less known whale and dolphin populations?
Well, I think we can use these exciting results. We can go out there and say, look, every time we study one of these species in any depth, we just find something amazing, you know, and just use that to just convince people of how important this is, that we need a massive effort in this area, and then you can kind of study everybody. And, you know, there's a long history from primates and others where you get, when you get a study is going on a charismatic megavertebrate in a habitat, it tends to sort of automatically have some protection for everything else there, right? So there's some of that, but, you know, against climate change, that's a whole other level of problem.
We're just getting over time now, so perhaps we have time for one more quick question. And then, of course, Richard will be around for the week. Yeah, go ahead, Johan.
Hi, thanks for the presentation, especially for the enthusiasm and the engagement that you give in your presentations. I'm very curious about of course, all these alliances, but you said that from time to time, one of the members of a certain group or alliance is sent away. I mean, it's refused by the group. Do you think, I mean, is there any kind of theory that you might have how this mechanism triggers? Suddenly somebody is not cool anymore and is kicked out?
I think it often happens in the context of new relationships forming, because just like that case I showed you with Lando, we had a case in the 1980s. If you read my book, the poor male Lucky wasn't very lucky. He kept getting kicked out of alliances, and often in the context of other dolphins forming new, you know, newly formed alliances and relationships. So yeah, Lucky wasn't lucky. Although I think the paternity data showed that he did get lucky. All right.
Thank you very much. Could you please join me in thanking Richard for that sublime plenary?
All right, thank you.